Hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our July Village Board meeting. If you could please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll look under staff reports at the top of the page. We start off with the Altamont Fire Department report, which the board has. Is there anything else you want to announce?
Good evening, everybody. So the new training tower is progressing nicely. They're hoping to be done in about 3 to 6 weeks. They're looking to start pouring concrete on the floors in 2 weeks. Thank you to Albany County for the assistance in doing a lot of the site work. They've been great working with us and digging out some of the new rows and bringing in millings and everything else. So they've been a great help. And just with last night's storms, we had a lot of power lines down, and we had a lot of people trying to go cross them and go over them, and trying to stop people from going down roads that were closed. It was a little crazy out there. Again, we never know when these power lines are going to get charged, and we don't want to see somebody getting hurt. So to see the power lines, don't go near them. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask one quick question? Do we have dates for movies in the park? I know that,
One was last Friday,
Last
and the other
Friday.
one is August 9th.
so we can promote August 9th. Okay.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to ask the police department if, oh, you're over here. You're always back there. I got lost. Thank you.
Just wanted to mention a couple things. Remind everybody, next month is Fair Month, which means we have a lot of people from out of town in our village. Just want to remind everybody, lock your car doors. Seems to be a time of year where we have a problem where people break into cars and stuff. So never had to go to one yet where anything's been taken out of a locked car. So please lock your doors. Other than that, I just want to address something real quick about last month's meeting. There was an allegation, there was a harassment by one of my officers involving a dog incident, which I reviewed the film. It's far from the truth. We were led to believe the incident just happened a month ago. It was actually happened February 7th before dog leash law even became an issue. The two gentlemen were advised because my officer was responding to a complaint by two women of a dog that ran up on her. I have the video available for anybody who would like to see it. You're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to sit down with you and watch and make your own, the allegation was she put her camera in her face and all sorts of stuff, which was not true. So
Okay.
Thank you for clearing that up. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Chief.
we consider ourselves pretty transparent, and I like to be transparent. So
Yeah,
if anybody wants to see it, like I said, they're more than welcome.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Frank. For Public Works, I'll just give you a brief update. I think everything is pretty status quo. They continue to pick up bags of debris, lawn debris, and sticks. If you have them bundled, you're going to see, I don't have a date yet, and DPW doesn't have a date yet, but we're going to have some paving starting within the next few weeks. They started the groundwork now, the DPW. We are paving about 5 streets. There'll be nixles that go out. There'll be some paper, probably papers left at people's houses to, let them know. As soon as we have the date, we can then start, informing each road when it's going to happen. It might be in one day. I'm not sure if it's one day or a couple days. But that is, we do this every summer. We have a few more to do this summer because we're actually doing some recoding of last year's roads and then 3 new roads that haven't been touched in a long time. So that'll be great. And I think that's the only update I have for DPW right now. At this time, there's public comment. If you have something you want to share with the board, you can come up to the microphone, and we're here to listen. Not a lot of movement. I think it's too hot outside. Everybody's resting now. All right, so I'm going to move on from public comment to item number 1 on our agenda, which is consider approval of the treasurer's abstracts, number 25, number 2, and number 3, and transfer of funds as submitted. We've all had a chance to review the vouchers. So if I could have a motion.
So moved.
Nick is first and second.
I'll second it.
John, and roll call, please.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Farrakhan?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. Okay, item number 2, 3, and 4 are all part of the discussion we started last month. I'm going to give just a brief summary, and then if anybody wants to add something I forgot, feel free to. We had some requests by residents to look at our leash law for the dogs, because it turns out that our leash law does not require them actually to be on a leash. It says on a leash or under control, and they were concerned because, like an incident that our chief just describes, if a dog is loose and it runs up on another dog that's on a leash, there can be some issues, or even just runs up on a person. But, so we we got some letters asking us to do that. We have letters that asked us not to change it, a couple of those as well. We had a petition of about a dozen people who were interested in, having this change made. This change, though, I just want to be clear, and I don't think it was clear to some of the folks that were speaking last month. So a lot of the comments that were received for not changing it had to do with the park. And the park is a separate entity in this case. The park has its own regulations, it is village property, and those regulations, I don't want to say the word supersede, but if that's, like, we have the law for the leash law, or under control as it stands right now, but in the park, dogs are required to be on a leash. We did talk about last meeting how it used to be no dogs allowed at all in that leash. That used to be the regulation. That changed way before any of us, probably about 20 years ago, I think. And people came and said, could we please, come in there and walk our dogs on a leash? So that was allowed by the board at the time. So that's how it's been. But I think this addresses, what this addresses is walking your dog around the sidewalks where everybody has the freedom to do that, or bike or whatever. Did we want to consider putting in there what many municipalities have, which is on a leash and in control, not or. So it's just changing of one word. That's the crux of the whole thing. We did talk, a person that did not want us to make a change brought up, and they were a town of Guilderland resident, but they made a point about, let's stick with Voorheesville. Voorheesville is the same as how ours is written. I would assume, these were done so long ago, we may have, modeled off of each other way back then, because we tend to do that sometimes. Looking at Albany, Schenectady, Troy, Colony, Clifton Park, Saratoga, Cobleskill is the ones I looked into. They are on a leash, and actually they regulate the size of the leash as well, many of them, like 6 to 8, feet. But they do require leashes. So I think maybe we're the outlier, I don't know, but we'll talk about that more shortly. But before we even get to whether we want to add that or not add that, we do have to look at the seeker for proposed local law number 2 of 224. I'm gonna turn to that page real quick. And Allison, if you don't mind, because you do it way better than I do, can you explain, seeker is something, when we're doing anything from a subdivision to a project, it gets looked at for its impacts on the environment and the surrounding areas. This is not that, but we do it because, can you explain that part?
So the top.
Is it not on it? It slides to the side. Okay.
So the village board's adoption of the local law is an action that's subject to seeker. And seeker is our state's environmental review law, which requires any time, the board takes an official action, it has to consider potential environmental consequences of that action. In this case, the adoption of the amendment to the law is really administrative in nature. It's not going to result in any kind of development or land use or physical disturbance to the land or environmental resources. So a majority of the environmental assessment form really isn't applicable. And the way the form is set up, it says right up front, if the only action under consideration is the adoption of a local law, then you just kind of attach a narrative explaining that, but then you still have to review part 2 and 3 of the form. So with the agenda materials tonight, we did prepare a draft EAF Part 2 and reasoned elaboration that basically just explains the adoption of the local law is really administrative in nature. It's not going to result in any physical disturbance to land or environmental resources. And for those reasons, all of the kind of questions on Part 2 are no or little impact. And so we basically wrote that up in a reasoned elaboration that if the board is agreeable, it would adopt as the Part 3, which declares a negative declaration, basically that the adoption of the local law won't have any impacts on the environment.
Okay, thank you, because it sounds reasonable like that, so you do a good job at those facts. So you'll see that on our short EAF, on the first page, you see where it checks yes under that legislative, but nothing else has to be checked on Part 1. And then if you go to the narrative, which is a couple pages behind that, this is an unlisted action. And the short, I think it's everything that our council just explained to us. I'm trying to see if there's anything on here it would be good for me to read. Allison, let me just, nope, just the code. All right, so that's that part, an unlisted action, name of the seeker status, and the explanation that she just put out there. All right, and if you look at part 2 of the short EAF, those are the questions that were pre-filled for us to look at, which is none or small impact may occur. Are we, everybody together?
Yes.
Okay, does anybody disagree with any of those checks that have been done? I'm just gonna ask that.
I do not.
You guys good?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all the land use,
administrative.
community, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So then if we go to short EAF Part 3, this is the part, you know, it talks about the moderate, was answered moderate, well, let's see, if there's need to explain why, all right, let me just try to find it here. I'm trying to find a little place here. So here it is at the bottom. The adoption of the proposed law is administrative in nature, therefore, subsequent land disturbance and development is not expected to result from this, which would be there'd be no significant impacts, what you just said, but that's what's on the sheet, just so you, does anybody have any questions about that? No?
No.
Okay. And then, but if we're looking at item number 2, it says review seeker for proposed local law, which we just did, and then consider approving resolution issuing a negative declaration for the proposed local law to amend dog control. If you, actually what works well at the bottom to me is the village board determines that an adoption of local law will not have an adverse impact on the environment. It authorizes filing of a negative declaration hereto according to seeker. And then we would have to vote on that. So, everybody good so far? So, could I get a motion for item 3 on the agenda? Consider approving resolution issuing a negative declaration.
So moved.
Michelle. And second,
I'll second.
Nick. And roll call, please, sorry.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Farrakhan?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. So now we're going to what we were talking about last time, consider the approval of local law number 2 of 2024. And, you know, to have some discussion on that beforehand to see what you want to do, basically, with that. We talked about last week, there were actually 3 changes. The change was instead of the or in control, it was and in control. The second one was adding the time for excessive barking, which we talked about last week, was added in I think it was 1952 or something like that. That was on there, we didn't add that. But the time that is followed by our animal control officers from the town, because it's the town that is in charge of this, is the 10 minutes and 30 minutes, I believe it was. That is what they go by when they come to answer a complaint, if there is one. And we also talked about, I think I've had one in my tenure with the village, which is a very long time. I think there's only been one, and it was a great resolution in the end. It was not an issue.
I went to Gilderland, referred to Gilderland's time frame.
We just modeled it because that is what they use. We didn't change, we actually kept our wording but added the times because that is the time, because just because we didn't have it, that's what it goes by, because whatever we don't have, it can, you know, their code kind of takes over there.
Supersedes that.
So that's, if somebody's making a complaint about excessive barking, there's got to be a standard for what constitutes excessive, you know? So is it 10 minutes, is it 30 minutes, is it whatever? So that's always been, so that was on there. And lastly, the one was that the village can make regulations on their property for things like, if there's an event that we can't have dogs at, if we have to put out for an event, dogs, you know, not allowed for whatever it is. Maybe there's a situation, we haven't had that, but just to have that in case it's something where it could be too many dogs or something like that. That was the third thing that was added. So those are the 3. Chief Pusey, do you mind coming up and just talking a little bit about, I don't know, giving us some input on, there hasn't been that many official reports for this, for dogs like walking in the village. But we did talk about incidents, and has the department experienced any incidents, or?
Most recently, the only couple of calls, which we had foiled recently, was in regards to the park, where individuals complained to the police that dogs ran up upon them as they entered the park. And, you know, our concern there is, it's hard to argue that you're in control of your dog when the dog's 100 yards away from you. So, but again, we haven't issued nobody for that, and again, if there was an ongoing problem, that's something we would deal with Guilderland. But we did have a individual bit by a dog last month, just a couple blocks over. It was a neighbor's dog that got out of the yard, so it wasn't on a leash. The individual did get injuries to his hand. He did not want to pursue anything police-wise. EMS treated him, but another neighbor was actually concerned. That's how we became aware of it, because he never even called the police. But the other neighbor did, because I guess the dog can be aggressive, and she had concerns for when she has people over if the dog got out again. Other than that, we have had not too many dog bites since 2008. I think we've had 3 or 4 dog bites. I remember there was one on Brandel. We have had issues where dogs have attacked other dogs, but not necessarily people. We have had a couple of those where dogs had to be put down because they attacked other dogs and caused serious injury to a smaller dog.
Okay.
But in the last few years, though, we really haven't had too much problems with the
Right.
animal bites and stuff like that.
So Chief, are those cases where you talked about either dogs fighting other dogs or dogs biting people, how many of those were cases where the dog was being walked off a leash versus the dog escaping from a fence or something?
We've actually had where it's actually happened where dogs were on a leash as well. The one on Brandel, the dog was actually on a leash and was able to unfortunately overpower the owner, and it attacked a smaller dog and did serious damage to the dog. But that dog started out on a leash. It's just the owner ultimately was determined couldn't keep the dog because she was able to control it in that case specifically.
If I recall, there was an incident, but it's private property, but, you know, the village walks in the fairgrounds. There was an incident in the fairgrounds.
Just recently, yes, that was, and that's why
of
the
loose dogs
fair-
that attacked
The fair did change their policy.
Yeah.
You did not have to have a dog on a leash until just recently when they did have a dog bite an individual on the fairgrounds.
yeah. So I don't think it's an everyday thing. I just
No,
think it's
And we've had the other side of the coin where dogs scratching little kids' faces at home, in homes and stuff, where we've responded to those where it's their own dog and
Yeah.
we've had little children
Sure.
get injuries due to dogs not being aggressive, but being overly playful,
Sure.
I guess.
Anybody else have questions for Chief? Okay, thank you. I just figured you'd have some
Mayor,
data.
before you vote, I didn't realize that comment was on everything on the agenda. I thought it was going to be one by one. May I make a brief comment before you vote on the topic?
Sure.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Joe Connors. I live on Gun Club Road. I'm the mayor, as you mentioned. Officially a Guilderland resident, but the village line crosses through our backyard, so I pay taxes and contribute to the well-being of the village, and I'm active in village events. First, a question for you, just so I and the public know. Regulations that the village have, are those published somewhere or in one spot?
I'll have to look. I honestly don't know if it's on our website. I know it was on the old site, but sometimes we transferred over with the new site. Not sure if that made it. Is it? Oh, thank you. Okay.
Okay. So there's regulations about, at one point, no dogs were allowed in the park, and then it got switched to a regulation that they were allowed only if they're on a leash. There should be a regulation like that in there.
It was switched many years ago. I mean, you're not going to see a switch. I think it was before our time, but it did switch.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a person in the audience last, Mr. Grafka acknowledged, he remembers that, that was the rule back then.
So there's a regulation now that says that all dogs have to be on a leash.
There's signage that
in the park.
indicates
There's
it as well.
signage there,
Yeah.
yes.
Just, that's important, whether or not it's a
Yeah.
regulation or signage. In terms of, last time you said the board hadn't made up its mind, it wouldn't make its mind up on the report of a couple of individuals with complaints, and you're open to alternatives. I have no problem with the sidewalk and having dogs on leashes on sidewalks. I think there's a different interest in the park, and I think there's room for restricted time periods that meets the needs of individuals that would like to play fetch with their dog, throwing a ball, a frisbee, and don't have big lawns. You want economic diversity in the village, and a lot of renters might not have places where their dogs can run around. So what I would suggest that the board consider is somebody on the board making a friendly amendment to what you currently have proposed, or just changing the proposal altogether to allow dogs to be on leash or under the control of their dog, of their handlers, between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. in the morning. I think that would be a good compromise, and it would prevent our animal friends from, some of them, living a leashed life, which nobody wants. I know you could say, well, they can always go to a different dog park, but then you're going to have to consider, well, all the gas going back and forth, how many trips are there going to be? Do you have enough data to factor that into your environmental assessment? So I'd ask you to consider that, a compromise that allow dogs under the control of their owners, playing fetch or whatever under certain restricted hours. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Since I allowed one, I will allow one more, but we should have had this only during public, I mean, it should have been during public hearing. Come on up, come on up.
I'd like to sit. I'm just getting over being sick and didn't sleep much last night because of the power outage.
All right, it is, except for the people at home cannot hear the comment at all, so I'm wondering if we can give you a microphone just to,
I can be loud enough.
not for the microphone. It won't get picked up by the system,
All right.
so I will run this over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. My name's Gary Faulkner. I've been a resident since 1984, owned a house on Park Street since 95. I have an 8-year-old female German Shepherd named Shiva. She is known by many in this town, kids and adults alike. 2 people who were bitten by German Shepherds as kids love her. She is not a threat to anybody. I have walked her off leash most of her entire life all over town. And she is so smart, you don't even need to be with her. She knows to stay on the sidewalk. She will not chase a squirrel. She will not chase a rabbit into the street. If I say come, she comes. If I say stay, she stays. She has interacted with many dogs and has really quite a good relationship with everybody in town. Kids at the school call her name off the school bus. Kids going by in cars say Shiva, Shiva. So I think she's a well-known dog. She's not a threat to anybody. I do not want to have to put her on a leash and punish her because of something somebody else wants. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. So I'd ask the board at this time if they have some comments or questions or thoughts.
Honestly, I don't really feel that this is a major issue in our village, and honestly, I'm not really inclined to change the law, personally.
Okay.
I'll just give you my opinion.
I'm just,
I was going to intentionally wait since I wasn't here last time. I don't know if Michelle,
it doesn't
you have
matter,
anything?
either
Are
way.
you good?
My only concern is there are people that are very much so in control of their animals, but there are people who say they are and aren't. And then there's gonna have to be, I mean, regardless, a judgment made. Having a couple of episodes myself and talking to a couple of people that have also had episodes, it just is a concern. So, I'm just concerned about those who think they have control but really don't.
and I think some people have the control, and this sounds like a wonderful dog, and I get that, and, but I think it has to be about the whole, not any individual in particular. And I just feel like people, I have a good friend who's deathly afraid of dogs. She doesn't know why, but they startle her. If she was in this village, I know she'd be, I mean, probably why she doesn't live here. We have a lot of dogs here. But And it's a great thing, but I do think that, we have to respect everybody, whether they're allergic to a dog, afraid of a dog, have a dog they don't want another dog coming up to. It just feels like, keeping the dog safe as well, so they don't, most of them are not like, is it Shiva or whatever, Shiva? They're not like her. They will, they could not even be running away, just, step into the road because they just wandered away from the dog. So I see this. I don't have a dog right now. I used to, and he was the best dog in the world, but I always put him on a leash because I looked for his safety. As well as I don't want him, he was a people lover. He would run up to anybody on the street if they were 5 feet ahead of me, and that person may not want him to do that. That's how I'm looking at this. To me, it doesn't matter. We have had issues. There's not many, I'm not going to say, but we also know it's a village that when something happens like this, people don't run to the police. They just, they just stay away from that person and they solve it on their own. They don't say anything. It's not like, we know that with a lot of things. I think this allows everybody to be free to walk and et cetera. I wouldn't, as much as we've worked on it, having a dog park down at Bozenkill at some point, and we still continue to look to that going forward. The park regulations I would keep separate from this right now because it is two separate things. We have DPW that I would want to hear from and get written, their summary of what they do. I want to talk to the managers of the park because they have all had difficulties with dogs being free at the park. As much as some people will watch and pick up after their dogs, the majority do not. So they have had continual, 2 park managers now, and our DPW has talked about it often. So I want to keep that separate. That can be considered if you ever want to do that at another time, and then we get the input from those folks about that. But this is just, walking around this village, and I would say, without knowing, probably 5% of people, if not more, have their dogs on a leash. I think they thought that is, that's kind of the norm. But I think it is unnerving for some people when their dog wants to go up and see somebody. And as much as I love dogs, when they charge at me from across the field at the park, which has happened twice, and I jump back in my car. I don't know those dogs. I don't know if they're friendly. Same thing on the street. I do not walk up and pet a dog unless I ask somebody first. And if they were off a leash, I think they would come right up to you. That's the nature of a dog. They're looking for approval, looking for petting. So that's how I look at it. And Nick, you had something you said you were thinking of.
Yeah, again, I apologize that I missed the last meeting. I had a work trip, so I had to be out of state. I did read all the materials that we've got, and I did read the minutes and watch the video of the last meeting, which, as you said, was a little confusing at times. But all that said, and I appreciate you kind of explaining all these things, I'm still having trouble drawing a line between the complaint of someone either on Fairview or in the park and all of these changes. Out-of-control dogs are already illegal. So if a dog is running at you across the field, that's already against the law. It's not like the law says they have to be either on a leash or friendly. They have to be on a leash or under control. Whether that should be changed, I think, is a fair question, and I'm not sure one way or the other. But I feel like if we're opening this law and we're changing things besides the or under control to and under control, there's a lot of other questions, right? How long does this leash have to be? We've already said that even dogs on leash could be scary to some people. Mm-hmm. And then do we need to create laws to make sure that nobody gets scared by loud children or maybe clowns? Some people are terrified of clowns. Like, I don't know if we need to outlaw clowns if they're not on a leash. And then the one that really gets me, and I think what really pushes me over, is if we're going to open this law, the chase or bark at motor vehicles part really gets me. And so if we were opening it, I would rather take time to really think about how we want to legislate this versus trying to do these piecemeal changes, because unfortunately, most dogs bark at vehicles, and
Well, we didn't change that.
I understand we
Oh,
didn't
okay,
change it, but if
okay.
we're opening the law and we're willing to consider changes
Sure.
to and versus or, and while we're at it, we're gonna
Okay.
add the 30 minutes and the 10 minutes, and while we're at it, we're gonna write in about the village board adopting regulations, why not also change that, or, again,
Or
take a
open it
step.
up to review is what you're saying there,
Yes.
Yeah, do a little more,
which makes sense.
yeah. So,
So I hear you ready to lead the charge on that, is what I heard. I mean, that's what I heard through all of
Shockingly,
that.
that's not what I said.
I don't know, I feel like I felt the intent of that. Yeah, so, maybe reviewing what was done in 1952, the rest of it too. But we were approached by folks
Yeah, I
that,
guess my,
we addressed the part that they were asking us to address.
which
And-
was the part that they wanted addressed?
Yes,
The lead.
the
Which
and,
part?
the and/or.
So then why did we change all the other stuff too?
We didn't change it, I personally, when
We
we were
added more stuff.
drafting it, we did the 10 minutes and 30 is in what we follow. It just wasn't written on ours, that is what's followed by the town animal control officer, so I thought transparent, people should know what that is.
It was also brought up that there's quite a few people that were in support of not having a new law and also support of. And it's only a real small minority of the bigger picture. And somebody mentioned that in the last meeting, and I don't disagree with that. So there's like 12 people have signed a petition, so we're going to change the law for everybody.
Right, well, we've done that before, though, a la chickens.
We have, and exactly.
Yeah.
But
That's why we
as it
listen
stands,
to
I
it.
mean, like, well, we have a choice, and then I personally walk my dog in a leash, but I don't think it's a major issue, so why change something we have that seems to work? I mean, if people are responsible enough for their dog, I know Gary walks Shiva, and I have no issue with that, and I think she's a great dog.
How's she gonna skateboard?
Yeah,
I don't
so I
think-
don't,
I don't know.
necessarily feel the need for a change. And there's already, if somebody gets bit by a dog, there's already laws and regulations regarding that.
Well,
So I
my
don't-
big thing, and you're telling us to separate it. To be honest, my problem is not with people walking their dogs on the street more as, I don't wanna go to the park, because people don't control their dogs there. If we're holding, there are people that do, but I've been there several times where they do not. So I don't bring
Well, then
my
that's a
dog.
whole
to-
different can of
That's
worms.
Which is what I'm
So that's
saying
why I'm
right
trying to
now, when
understand,
she
of
said,
those
we're
complaints,
gonna
why are we doing
separate
this?
these, that is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to support you.
Well, because
So-
it started with an incident on a street. So it did start with somebody, whose dog was approached by other dogs. And the dog got, very scared because of the approach. So that's how it started.
But that
It
can
just,
happen even on a leash, I
It
guess.
can
is
happen
my
on a
guess.
It could, but hopefully people, they're on a leash, you are controlling them, hopefully. That's the premise.
And
So-
if they're not on a leash, hopefully you do it responsibly. I
Yeah.
don't know, I'm torn. I see some of the value, I still have some issues.
So do you want to table in order to look at the law as a whole and update and amend the law as it stands? Like, look at everything
Where is the
within?
park coming into this whole thing?
The park
Right
is
now,
a
it's
separate
not.
entity.
That's separate.
Well, I
It's a-
think that's when last month's meeting, that was a big part of the problem, the park.
Well, as it
So-
is, we have leash laws that says a leash must
Yeah.
be on.
Right,
the
well, what I'm
park.
saying
Yeah.
is we're looking at revising the law when people were complaining about the
Yeah.
park, not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, what we were talking about was in response to people who had a problem on the streets. We didn't bring the park into it.
No, no, no,
That
no.
came in on its own.
Yes, it did.
And I'll
But,
just, just to note, the park, if it's village property, the village has, inherent authority to adopt rules and regulations for the use of public property, for the use of village property. So to the extent the village has already been doing that and put up signage reflecting the rules that are in place at the park, the fact that, we've written it into this law just to kind of memorialize it under the dog control law, it doesn't mean that, the village doesn't already have that authority to manage, public property. So it's just something to keep in mind, it's.
so it doesn't have to be in here because it can be regulated by the village as a public entity.
Yeah, the village has authority under, kind of the state law enabling legislation to manage, village property, public property, and it's already been doing that.
So are you in favor, straw poll, of looking at the whole thing? I mean, you brought up the barking and things like that. Do you want to look at it as a whole? And, bring it back as a draft in September to be looked at, as a public hearing in October on any changes that you think should be in there? I'm just, it's a guess of a timeline. It doesn't have to be that, but
Yeah,
I'm just looking forward.
Trying to choose my words carefully so I don't get signed up for things that I didn't mean to, but.
Happens to me every day.
I have difficulty supporting the law as written.
Okay. That's fine.
period. I'll stop there.
So Allison, Michelle, would you be in favor of, looking at it as a whole and taking out, amending things that we think as a group that might want to be amended? And I would ask that all the board is going to have to look at it and throw some things together, like what you think, what would be good amendments, something that might be, look at other places, look at all these other towns, which are, you'll see are strikingly similar to what we have, by the way.
Except for Boardsville.
Yeah, I mean, actually, their wording on everything else is almost identical to us, but we are very identical to the town, except for a couple of things that we left out. Like they follow, but we just don't have it in our thing, so. Yes? Are we in favor of that? Michelle, are you with me?
I'm thinking, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
So look at the whole law between now and September and see what we think. Go through it.
Yeah,
Allison, so what, I could just table that for tonight?
Yes.
We don't have to run a resolution, we're good with that.
Do we need
Yes.
a motion to table, or do we just withdraw?
Do I need a motion to table that?
You can do a motion to table it so that the board, has the flexibility. If you want to revisit, this resolution to adopt this version of the local law, you can do that in the future. If someone wants to introduce an introductory version number 2, that's
Okay.
different. The board can decide to hold a public hearing on that. You have the flexibility if you just want to table it.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to table the law as written for tonight, so that the board may reflect on it and bring some ideas together for how we might want to change it.
I'll second that, and also if
Second.
there's a way that we can try to solicit constructive feedback on the
Yeah,
law.
we'll have to, yeah. Well, and I think that's what a good draft is for. Like I said, it doesn't have to be voted. I mean, you can have a draft that we can work on,
Yeah.
present it, get some feedback on it, amend it, type of a thing. It can,
Yep.
public hearings, that's what they're for. That's what they're, all right, so roll call, please.
Trustee Ganance?
in favor.
Trustee Farah?
In favor?
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. All right, so this meeting's going to the dogs. Okay, let's, I just had to say it.
That's a good one.
So let me go to item number
6.
5.
Oh, you're right.
Don't do that to me. Let me just turn myself to the next page real quick.
Yeah, so 2 wasn't actually a board action, right?
No, that was just
It was
a-
just 3.
That was just,
Yeah, 3 we did, but it's kind of moot at the moment. Okay. So number 5 is consider approval of resolution to confirm available maximum daily flow subject to a specified conditions for property located at 1180 Burn Altamont Road, Town of Guilderland. So I'm going to go back to, I think it was May, I believe. There was a project we were presented with, just a preliminary project at the old Peter Young Center, and I think it's called the Inns of Altamont. Mr. Hanson is the owner of the property up on the hill. They want to redesign and develop that site into an event space with a partial restaurant and lots of nice amenities around the whole site. So at that time, we set up an escrow, as we do for all technical services, so that we could have our engineers look at, what they're looking for is, water capacity, or what we can give them for this project. Things have changed a lot, as you know, in the years. We've had a lot of drought summers. Our water usage and availability has changed. We have wells that have had issues with manganese. We have, sometimes we're on one well, sometimes we're on multiple wells. It's been changing a lot over the last, I want to say 10 years, basically. So we had to look at that and have our Brad Grant from Barton and the Judas look at what would be a number that we could safely provide for an outside commercial site while still maintaining what we need for future village homes that automatically are entitled to water. We have some outside homes that are entitled because they're along a line that they have an agreement from many years ago. We have 5 houses down on 146 that are entitled to water at some point if they choose it. And so we had to look at our capacity. Basically, we've done this before. Back in 2008, we started, or 2009, a water capacity study. We always put aside how much water availability we'd have for inside the village that we had to make sure we had, and outside. We do that by using the numbers that people use in their homes, gallons per day, et cetera. So We updated that in 2013, because we always got to keep looking at it just to make sure we're still on track and on target. And then we've done it just now, again. And we looked at it a little bit last year because we had someone who came to us for an outside development, for housing development, and we had to turn them away for water because we did not have the capacity. It's not safe for us. We are not connected to any other municipality. We have to make sure we have enough water for our residents. And any outside, town residents that are currently hooked onto our system. So Brad, perhaps, so tonight we're looking at the different, different parts of this project. We don't have a formal plan yet, but they need a conceptual approval of so many gallons so that they can go to the town and start their planning process. It's a town property. So that's where this all comes in. So can you talk to the board maybe a little bit in the audience about, how you figured the capacity where it is? And
Yes, for sure. It started with the engineer's report from ABD Engineers that the applicant submitted in early May, it's not dated here, but the original look at it considered three different uses of water. One was a boutique motel, had an option of 30, 40, or 45 rooms. The second was an event venue, wedding or whatever. And then the third was a bar or pub restaurant, 60 seats. And there was, as Mayor Denine alluded to, in 2013, they developed a Phase 2 water policy. And basically at the time, they were saying, here's what we're using, and we want to have some planning ahead to allow for 17,000 gallons per day inside the village and another 8,000 gallons per day outside of the village. The project down on Gun Club that was actually in the town of Guilderland would have blown a hole right in the outside. It was too big. It was too much. But we did look at the site design flow calculations from ADB Engineers. The original, as I said, had options of 30, 40, and 45 rooms. 30 rooms seemed reasonable, combined with an event venue for 50 additional people. If you have a wedding there, for example, you might have half of your rooms with the attendees. And so the 50 would be essentially a small wedding, 2 medium-sized wedding. Recently, during July, we got an amended report that increased those significantly. It did downsize the bar and pub restaurant from 1,200 gallons a day to 900, so it was 300 less. But the event venue was 250 additional people, not 50. So that alone went from 500 gallons a day to 2,500. Special events, not an everyday occurrence. And quite honestly, the hotel itself, I think it's going to be pretty quiet there on a Monday or a Tuesday. Altamont's a great place, but I'm not sure there's something great enough to come out there, but unless you had free beer at the pub. But the 5,000 gallons a day is what worked out with 30 rooms. The amended calculations that came in July increased that to 32. There was some discrepancies there, but the number assigned to it was 32 rooms. The big thing that just pops off the paper was the 250 additional people or events, and the restaurant went from 60 seats to 45. That totaled almost 7,000 gallons a day and would put the additional usage well over that 8,000 gallon allotment. Even the original, I updated the spreadsheet, and that brings it to 8450. But there would be days, like I said, where you wouldn't have anybody up there to speak of, but the And we also added in some of the known projects that are out there. 5 homes down on Armstrong Circle have the right to use village water. That was extended out. I worked on the project. I can't even remember.
It
I
was
think
the
it was the
80s.
early 90s.
Or
or so.
early, it was
Or
like
80s,
late
I-
80s or early 90s, yeah.
Yeah, I was a young man back then.
We all were.
There is a room for additional inside village usage, but, don't want to rob from that for outside usage, because there's still going to be infill development, redevelopment, and want to encourage that, I would think, as a village board. So part of my scope was to review the original report. I went on, I had 2 very good tour guides, one Larry Adams and one Tim McIntyre, that showed me elements of the system that I knew were there and grew up near, but didn't see them in action. And there's 7 homes in addition to Peter Young that are being served up above the tank. So all this requires pumping. There's a single vertical turbine pump next to the tank, and that pumps it up to, there's 2 sets of pumps. One that'll go to Cobb, which isn't really using water now, and then to Peter Young. And before Peter Young, it was a seminary, La Salette Seminary. I remember when there was 150 students there, and when it got to 4, they closed it. But that was a long time ago, and quite honestly, Peter Young is closed his doors around 2016. So there might be a little maintenance type of water usage, but it's pretty low. The report took the yearly flow and kind of computed an average, which is of interest. They aren't talking about totally using more water than used to be. It's just probably going to be in a shorter period of time. But the real concern to me is summertime. Your wells are subject to drought conditions. 1965, everybody in this area was without water practically. And I think they had to pump out of Thompson's Lake to fill the reservoirs. It was a severe drought. They call it the drought of record. Yesterday was not that. But we want to basically keep the very near 8,000 gallons a day. There will be times when Peter Young may use more than 5,000 gallons a day when they have a special event. But I think the move to 250, I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see it in a time of critical need in the summer. I used to water my lawn. I don't worry about that anymore. I figured out quickly after the first year, the more I water, the more I mow, so I stopped doing that. But it's a lot of people do that. And there are more demands as we see developments, over on Western Avenue, Schoharie Plank come in. That's inside village usage, but there's also outside going towards Knox, out on the Bozenkill towards Westfall Road, that those are developments that have been submitted before and hopefully will get scaled down. But the second one we reviewed, that was 6,920 gallons a day, I think puts us well over the additional outside usage allotment. The original at 5,000 gallons a day, that category of outside usage came up to 8,450. But some of that hasn't happened yet. 5 homes down in the village, down in Armstrong Circle. We updated some of the projects within the village limits that are haven't been built yet, but are conceivable of doing, including out on the Bozenkill, the CM Fox development, and Severson Helderberg. There's It's not a very developable piece of land. There used to be a sawmill up there in the ravine years ago. The one finger of property that they have that brings frontage out to Severson for potential access is where the creek is.
Yep.
So an expensive ordeal to extend a box culvert just to have a road to a lot or two. Most of it is wild topography that really isn't developable.
I think you calculated a couple homes probably. in
Yeah,
that-
yeah,
That site,
yeah, even more than that. I think it was like 5 homes.
or maybe it was, okay.
Which was generous, but that's in the inside village usage and not entirely germane to the outside
And I-
usage is where we're at.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the numbers that we started with phase 1, phase 2, when Jeff Mueller, before he retired, this was something that when a house added on, he would subtract it from that amount. He's kept, good track of that, and then we revisit it every so many years to make sure we're still on track. And it seemed to me that when we talked to you, Larry and I met with you, that those numbers still held true, the 8,000, it's based on the usage that we see. So
Yep.
we could still say those numbers were good. So
Yep.
that's where the 5,000 gallons per day maximum would be safe to use for a project and still make sure what we had, enough left over for what we know might be coming down the road. And it could be 20 years down the road, but,
Most of the additions, in fact, from what I see, all of the additions from 2013 are in the outside of Village Water District.
Yeah.
But you want to leave some, as of now, there's about, little less than 3,000 gallons a day left before
Right,
you
which
exceed
is-
that 17.
so in the resolution that you guys, that received, that this, I read, consider approval of the resolution, just some of the highlights were the maximum daily flow of 5,000 gallons per day shall be used solely for potable drinking water supply to the parcel project. The village board has not evaluated fire protection needs, and the project does not allocate or approve use of village water supply for village protection purposes. A lot of that has to do with pumping as well, is what I understood, and fast and the speed and things like that.
Correct, and, essentially, if you're doing with fire sprinklers, you gotta go by NFPA code. You may have 2 zones, maybe 3. I'm not a fire protection engineer, but it wouldn't be tens of thousands of gallons a day. A sprinkler head, I'm looking for one, about 15 gallons a minute.
Okay.
And if you had 2 zones of that, that's one thing, but there's potential for storage on that site, not using village water. They did investigate the possibility of using Cobb's system, but they may get more bang for their buck if they do storage on site versus running a new line up to Cobb, fixing that tank, and then depending on that water to come down. There's a 30,000 gallon tank at Cobb, but that system, even dormant, it needs fire protection water,
Right.
which has its source from 2 basins up on Old Stage Road. There's a lot of elements to the system. I like the idea of on-site storage where you size your storage for a fairly severe event where you, with fire protection, you can fight it, but not the extension of hydrants outside the village, because then you can draw a lot of water and you could dry the town out on a droughty period.
Well, I'm going to just run through the last 3 that I said we have on our resolution. The proposed connection plan must be submitted by the applicant for review and approval by the village board. There shall be no water supply service for the project unless the connection plan is approved by the village board following a complete review of the project under seeker. That all has to come eventually when we get the actual connection, how it would look, the infrastructure, et cetera. An outside user agreement will be put together for water service between the village and the applicant will be required to, before the connection is made to the village system. Water rates are charged in accordance with the Village of Altamont rate schedule for non-resident commercial users. And any connection to the village water supply will be upon terms and conditions approved by the village board, including but not limited to some infrastructure upgrades that are needed to make this work, right? The water is going up there, provision spare turbine pump, replacement of centrifugal pumps, a new water main to replace the 2-inch one that broke this year, a water leakage test, which is, I think, pretty common.
Yep.
An additional underground water storage tank may be required, that's what you were just talking about. And so those are the highlights from the resolution. Do any of you have a question for Brad or about the resolution, or?
I do.
Okay,
Lots of numbers. I usually like numbers, but I couldn't follow all of them. How many gallons per day does the village produce today?
Larry?
do you have that off the
That
top of your
wasn't
head?
part of my
Or-
thing,
or
but
even a range, right? I know it's going to vary between the summer and the winter, I'm guessing, or maybe the use.
Yeah,
1,000, I assume.
thousand.
Thank you. And how much of that capacity is reserved for inside the village?
there's an allotment beyond what's being used today. It started in 2013 at 17,000 gallons a day.
17,000 is how much we use, or how much is?
Extra that
We
would
have,
be.
we have leftover.
So what's the breakdown between inside and outside the village?
In 2013, they determined beyond what's happening now. Okay, there it is, the average summertime demand, 220,000 gallons a day. But in 2013, and that was kind of when the Bozenkill Road Extension project, or very close thereafter, those 10 homes went in. But so already 3,600 in 2013, another 300 in 2014, and, here in 2025, another 4,400 for the CM Fox project, another 12 three-bedroom homes for about 4,000 gallons for the Bozenkill, and an allotment, a generous allotment of 1,900 for the Severson Helderberg.
Sorry, we make between 180 and 280,000 gallons per day, right? And you're saying on a worst-case day in the summer, maybe not even worst-case, the average day is 220,000 that we use?
Yes, that's what he just said.
So
That's
we're-
what-
Average summertime, I think Larry said up to 280.
We'll go over 300 on a dry day,
Yeah.
but when you're asking for an average, our average is 180
Okay.
around the calendar.
Okay, 180 is the
That peak
average.
demand that we are concerned with.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess I'm very concerned about it, so I'm wondering,
Right.
like, are we sure another 5,000 on top of where we are? Between droughts, water main breaks, the manganese and pump stations going down, like, I guess I gotta trust you, but, you see, so.
That's why you're the engineer.
Yeah. All right, never mind.
Yeah, there's capacity there. That doesn't mean that there aren't things to improve that. And I think Larry and I talked when we met is, one of them is a bottleneck to getting the water from pumps, either down on Brandel Road or out here on Gun Club, up to the tank to replenish what is used. It's kind of that peak part of the day, people are doing dinner, everybody's home, I gotta water the lawn before dinner, yada, 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 fill the pool. So there are peak periods that still can be furnished, but the village did the right thing in 2008, which was the Phase 1 water policy, and they've kept after it with the Phase 2 water policy and monitoring it. So we updated some of the new things that have come and are on the books for water demand, both inside and outside. So we have kind of a roadmap as to where we are with those original allotments. I wasn't part of the original allotments, but I know Jeff and spent a lot of time with it, and it seems reasonable insofar as that, but there are You know, you always worry about leaks. I mean, old water systems leak. Many cities, half the water they produce leaks and is not used. I don't think Altamont's anywhere near that far. Have you done a formal leak survey?
Knock on wood.
Yes,
Yeah, they've done all that.
okay. So I do think it's manageable, but I think you got to do what we're doing here today, is every time you come in here, you update this, but you're getting towards the end.
Well, we talked about outside connections.
Yeah.
They would be no more. I mean, you know. and-
That's what I'm trying to understand.
No, that
When
would
do we-
be.
When do we say no?
No,
Do we go
well-
when we get to zero
Well,
available?
like, what's the percentage?
No, we met the allotment that we had available, the excess.
This is.
This is,
This
yes.
gets us to zero.
Yes.
So,
I mean, which you still have, as you feel, that there's still room, because this is not.
For
happening every
outside,
day.
yeah, that category would be maxed out.
That would be the category. 'cause we
Inside has
reserve
got
so
about
much.
3,000 gallons a day left. Not a lot.
After this.
After what you have worked in on the charts, which are
Yeah.
which are all the developments that could happen within the village.
Correct,
All
not
the ones
current.
we've talked about, not what's, you know, so on the chart that he's referring to, that he's looking at,
do we have a copy of that?
you know what, I don't know that I
I
don't
feel
know
like
we
maybe that
did.
would have helped a lot,
I know.
but
It's been our we've had it before, it's the, Brad updated
it
it
just
for
sounds
us.
like if
as
we
he
have,
was- as he
if we
was
have
doing it.
8,000 available after we account for everything and we're giving up 5,
Well, what we-
that sounds crazy.
Yes. And Larry, I'm not gonna, I know you may not know this, but you are so good with numbers, you might know it. I know there's a current usage at that site. Do you have any idea off the top of your head, or you don't want to guess?
Right now?
Yeah, for that property. So it,
Probably 800 gallons a day,
okay,
accounting for
yep, okay.
just that.
So you're looking at it, you know,
I bet you he's
what Brad felt was okay would be an additional
4,200.
4,200.
Yeah.
Just, you know,
What is the nature of that 800 gallons a minute? Maintenance people, just,
Actually, right now that the leak's fixed, it's actually less.
okay. We had done a project for Peter Young years ago. They're testing the plumbing there is important, you know, to really go through the place and make sure that you aren't just leaking water away.
and I think what you've been telling me is you're confident that for the nature of the project, this is not happening 7 days a week. You know, this wouldn't be happening 7 days a week.
Yeah. My guess is it's 5. And it may not even be that.
It's probably 1 to 2 days, like fall. Yeah, like where we have that, like it's in a perfect world here and there, you could get maybe 40 to 50% occupancy, and maybe 50 events a year.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to put the 5,000 number into context of where we are.
We understand that, because when we ran the calculation, you know, we're sitting there saying, well, we're way under what the 5,000 is, but that's on a yearly basis. You said, well, in a year, we won't use as much, but the real concern is on
Summer.
peak day, what will happen?
Yeah.
So what we've talked about before, not trying to use Cobb and bringing it down, but actually putting the storage tanks and the pumps in for the fire. So that obviously solves actors. We'll actually get that filled by a water truck will bring that in. We also only have 30 rooms, so I think what ABD accidentally did was, two hotel rooms have 2 bedrooms in each one. So that might be why they put it that way. The other thing that we had talked about was, you can use gray water systems and storage tanks to collect the rainwater on site, because we're already gonna have stormwater. And the storage tank can be used for the gray water / ox irrigation. So we wouldn't be using anything along that. And if peak demands are, like we say, 2 or 3 days, it's not the biggest problem to bring 15,000 gallon tanks in there. So that we're not ever gonna be using 5,000
Yeah, and I understand that all these things are preliminary. We'd have to wait and see what the actual review is, but from what I understand, 5,000 seems reasonable. We could bite that off.
Are you're comfortable with that, is what I'm saying?
I'd be even
I'm
more
only-
comfortable, because the allotment is 110 gallons per day per room.
Right, so it's only 30 rooms.
Right. If, and many communities have talked about this, they're doing it in California, but the gray water you just talked about, collecting rainwater, it doesn't have to be potable water to flush the toilet. It'll wash your hands and drink, obviously it does. But if you can take some of that 110 gallons a day with ingenuity and a little of this, that's less water you'll be drawing from the village. They can't be connected, it's a gray water system, separate tank. The plumbing doesn't connect, but it's doable.
It's not like we're promising it at this point. This is just giving them estimates.
I would love to see that.
They can't go beyond that. They can't go beyond that.
Yeah,
Well, are we promising there has to be that they do that?
we looked at that back, God,
Yeah.
probably 2012 or 13 or something like that for Peter Young, and that was kind of what we were seeing is, you got to start over with plumbing here. But the good thing is, sewer has been extended up there, and
Okay, so, if you're comfortable with that, and again, this is a conceptual approval, so they can continue to move on with their project going forward. I would imagine that, maybe Allison, this is a good question for you. If we find as we look at, the plans going forward, that we need to reduce that to 4,000 or for 4,500, I'm just throwing things out there, that is possible to do that.
Well, this resolution confirms, available capacity.
Right.
So you're not giving them,
Okay.
an approval or a right to connect to the system now to serve that project, because you can't do that until, seeker is complete.
It's the potentially
It's
available
the potential,
capacity, right?
yeah,
Right.
okay. So, I read the, can I have a?
motion.
Nick's gonna approve, or give me a
And I'll
motion,
second. I'll
and
second.
Michelle is seconds, or after all that. And roll call, thank you, sorry, Mrs. Blackman. As it reads, consider approval of resolution to confirm available maximum daily flow subject to specified conditions for property located at 180 Burn Altamont Road, Town of Guilderland. Nick moved it and Michelle seconded it.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Farah?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. Thanks, Brad, appreciate it.
yeah, no problem. I don't know if you've done a market study on the restaurant and bar/pub. It's amazing. It's 15 minutes from here to Route 146 in Guilderland. The people down there thinks they're coming out here to the Matterhorn, and it's a 2-hour drive. Getting people to drive by 6 restaurants that come out here, it's always, quality usually wins out, but it's a smaller market. It's,
They did suggest a free beer, so, no.
yeah, I'll be your first customer.
There you go. All right, item agenda number 6 is consider approval of contract for Village of Altamont's renewal of liability insurance of $68,646 and 94 cents from Marshall and Sterling. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
John, and second,
I'll second.
Nick. And roll call, please.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Farah?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. I'm going to go to item number 7. Consider approval to purchase terrorism insurance from Marshall and Sterling, and Nick's going to give a quick summary. This is an annual agenda item that we have to entertain.
Yes, I think
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back to the recording and just play it back.
Every year,
after
yes.
Because I'm doing it off memory, I haven't looked it up this year, but essentially, I'm going to make a motion to decline this insurance. There we go, he even wrote it out for me. And the reason for that is, when we looked into the details of what it covers, it would only ever kick in if It was a terrorist act against the village as declared by the Department of State, and there's a bunch of these other conditions. And, you know, I'm not friends with everybody, but I don't think we're ever going to have that kind of issue here in this village. So I
Let's hope
will make a motion to decline purchasing terrorism insurance
I'll
from
second
Marshall
it.
and Sterling.
Okay, Michelle is second. And roll call, please.
Trustee Ganance?
Now, what do I say?
Well, the motion was your,
He's saying we don't want it.
right,
so I
no,
say-
he
My
read
motion is to
he
decline
made
it.
the new motion.
So that is the motion.
That's the motion to decline.
Okay. In favor.
Trustee Farrakhan?
In favor of declining.
Thank you, Nick.
Trustee Scally?
In favor of declining.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. All right, excellent. Item 8 is consider authorizing Mayor Denine to sign an escrow agreement with Kyle Turin for the payment of municipal expenses for review of proposed water and sewer connections for a project located at 208 Main Street, Altamont, New York, tax map 37.18-1-2. So I'll give you a brief background on this. This property is in the village. It's a gentleman who wants to connect to the sewer, but the water is not going to be an issue. The sewer cannot be done, it's on the hill, the windy part of the hill. So he needs our engineers, along with his, to look at the possibility of going down the back of the mountain to connect to Prospect Terrace. So it's like on that windy part on the right, and you'd have to come down. This was something we had looked at before when another person was gonna build a house there, and we talked about it and approved it, that whole process, like, I guess, years ago now. But this is a new person who would like to build a home there and wants to see if there's a way to do this. So it is we always set an escrow up for technical services from our council and our engineers. So he would be doing that. That's what this is for, but he's entitled to the utilities. It's a village resident. It would be a village resident.
And he's paying the expenses.
He's paying the
All that
$5,000
weird-
escrow, yep, to do that. And all of our escrows start for things like this at $5,000, and if it gets to be more than that, when it hits $1,000, they have to replenish, and then we refund anything not used. So it's a normal thing that we do. So can I have a motion?
So moved.
John, and second,
I'll do it.
Michelle? And roll call, please.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor?
Trustee Farrakhan?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. Item number 9, resolution to affirm Mayor Denine's appointment of Lori Pinsey from Zoning Board of Appeals alternate member to member. Position was vacated by Danny Ramirez and has a 3-year term which expires on March 2025. Could I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, Michelle's first and Nick is second. And roll call, please.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor?
Trustee Farrakhan?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. Item 10, it's finally here. You've been waiting a while. Still here, it's great. Consider appointment of Vincenzo Trena Byrne to part-time police officer, not to exceed 20 hours per week, at a salary of $19 per hour, per recommendation of Todd Pusey, chief. Position is a probationary for a period up to 1 year, and after successful completion of 1 year, the salary is increased to $20 per hour. And I would say thank you for being here tonight, and can I have a motion?
So moved.
John is first, and
second.
second is Michelle. And roll call, please.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor?
Trustee Farrakhan?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. So welcome to the APD, glad to have you. And looking forward to working with you going forward. Thanks, chief.
Just so everyone knows, too, it's the replacement for Jason McCann.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
We had waited, because he was in the academy for a while, and then he had to do his probationary period with Mechanical before we could actually hire him. So he's been in the works for a long time, and he's gonna be a great asset to the department.
Awesome.
Great. Great to have you.
Looking forward to it. Item 11 is consider approval to hire the following individuals for Bozenkill Park Summer Recreation Program. Ari Din, Schenectady, lifeguard at $16.30 per hour, and Olivia Rollins, Guilderland, lifeguard at $16.30 per hour, per recommendation of Jamie Rubin, Bozenkill Park Director. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Michelle?
Second.
And Nick is second. And roll call, please.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor?
Trustee Farrakhan?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. Item 12 is consider authorizing Mayor Denine to sign RBC Wealth Management letter authorizing RBC Wealth Management to issue 2023 Service Award one-time payments of $700 to William Cleveland, Dave Cowan, William Ernst, and Tom Person, Altamont Fire Department members. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Nick, and second,
I'll second it.
and John. And roll call, please.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Farrakhan?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. Consider request of Altamont Fire Department to participate in the following events: Movies in the Park for July and August, National Night Out on August 6th, and a 9/11 memorial ceremony on September 11th per request of Paul Miller, Chief. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Michelle, and second,
I'll second it.
John. And roll call, please.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Farrakhan?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. Before I go to, oh, no, never mind, I take that back. Item 14, consider approval of board minutes for June 4th, 2024. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
John is first. Second.
Oh,
I'll second
me.
it.
Okay. So
I'm
you weren't
sorry.
here, so.
Yeah, but I watched the video. So
Oh,
I
that's
felt like
true.
I was-
I'm
Michelle,
sorry.
all right, well, Michelle is second.
I didn't want
She
to
did chime in.
monopolize everybody's.
And
Yeses and nos.
roll call, please.
Michelle second.
Yes, she is.
Okay. Oh, I am? Okay.
Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Farrakhan?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor.
Mayor Denine?
In favor. What?
Something got dropped.
It did. I just feel like I don't have an end to mine.
Oh.
I'm missing a second page.
15
I hear
is
it's right here.
executive session.
Thank you. Can I borrow yours?
Yeah, on the second page.
Yeah, I just lost my second page in my moving things around. Sorry about that. Okay, before we go to item 15, just really quickly, because that is consider entering into executive session, which, so we have to leave, and maybe we'll see you when we get back. If not, we'll say have a nice week. I just want to announce a couple things really quickly, all good news stuff. We did put something on our website that I think we know, it was in the paper a while back. We were lucky enough to be chosen as a community project for our wastewater treatment plant by Congressman Tonko's folks for about $1.2 million. And then we recently were one of 3 people who received TAP funding for sidewalks within the village of about $1.4 million. That'll connect from Sunset Drive all the way to Indian Meadows. It's probably going to take about 2 years for the whole project, it sounds like. More to come on that, but it was kind of exciting. And lastly, I don't think I told any of you this, because I was going to email, but we lost our power last night. Albany County, we worked on an application for they had a Parks and Recreation grant, not, huge money, but we applied for money to put in a pickleball court at Bozenkill Park next spring, and we will be getting all the funding from Albany County for that. So that was nice. I just wanted to announce those good news things. 'Cause
Guess I gotta learn pickleball.
I guess you have to learn a new sport. I guess they're teaching it in schools now, so you can,
I'll go back
your
to
kids
school.
will learn.
Billy Madison.
So 15 is consider entering into executive session to receive privileged advice and legal counsel from the village attorney that is outside the scope of the open meetings law. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Nick, second?
I'll second it.
Michelle,
John can have it.
All right, John, she's saying you can have it, John.
Thanks.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Nobody. So thank you, and I hope you have a great evening. Stay cool. It's supposed to get better. Let's do this. I have so many papers, I lost that one. Oh, here's yours, sorry.
Probably gonna run my kid home.
Okay,
Be back in 5 minutes.
yep, just go. Go fast. Like the wind. These are only batteries. This one's dying. That one's red, this one's red. They're still going, but they're red. Put that on our list of things to do. I think I